First of all, Kenny, much appreciated joining us here today. I know that you have had an incredibly stressful week with the launch of your book, which I'm absolutely proud and show people very quickly. So, if you don't know Kenny, Kenny is an incredibly inspiring individual. He's just written his, second book? First book. And honestly, if you know anything about his story, it's a really inspiring read. But very quickly, when you're at an event, how do you describe yourself?
It depends who I'm talking to. Yeah, to be honest, I did this. Everyone can help me.
I tell you what.
Yeah.
It's a bit,
That's okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say your voice is projected. This depends who I'm speaking to, but I think more times than not, influencer, but if not, say I'm an entrepreneur. I'm getting used to the over thing. It's only been a week, so there's not much to say.
True, but at the same time, you've done so much, had an incredible impact. In fact, in terms of your story, I think it's best to start in the present and look at the things you've achieved. For those that haven't heard or don't know Kenny, which is probably the minority in the room, if I give you a quick list of his achievements, this won't be quick at all. So, Forbes 30 under 30 for law and policy listed on Evening Standard's Progress 1000 as one of London's most influential people in social pillars. Community Spirit of London Awards in 2014. You were named the UK's #1 black student in 2014. I can see you blushing slightly there. Was awarded a leadership award at the previous awards in 2015. TEDx speaker, trustee of several organisations like the BBC Children's in Need, City Gateway, the British Youth Council, member of the advisory board of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, recipient of an Amos Bursary and the RSA and the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust. You were a governor of the Harris Primary Academy in Peckham, a co-founder of your own research academy, and also you've been featured all over BBC, ITV, Sky News, Channel 4, Channel 5, the list continues, but also you authored the Kenny Report and obviously That Peckham Boy. So I'm sure I missed out plenty along that as well. But seriously, look, you've had an incredible impact on the local and national community around here. If we go back to when you were your teenage self, what things that you've achieved really stand out for you for the impact that they've had on the community?
What I achieved as a teenager.
No, sorry, now.
Now.
Yeah, well, if you're a teenager, what things do you think, Christ, I should have done that? Or wouldn't even business do anything like that?
Well, a book first and foremost.
Yeah?
I think anyone that's wrote a book knows how challenging it can be in terms of, particularly when you get like someone telling you to write 60,000 words. That sounds crazy. So I think for me, just doing that was, and also particularly like with Penguin, right? Like I grew up reading Penguin books and other people's books, so the one day thing, you're going to become one of the authors. It's crazy. That was not on my vision board when I was younger. If I ever had a vision board. And what else?
So much right.
I think for me, that's just the one that's very present because it's in my mind. I feel like business-wise, I always felt that I would do well anyway.
Okay. It's good to have that self-confidence as a kid, I guess.
So I'm not, like, how much I would make, I didn't know, but I felt I would do well. There's a lot of things I just really felt I could do when I was young. I think when I was young, I think one thing that stayed with me from young till now is I've always been audacious. I always had audacity just to believe in terms of myself and what I believe I can achieve. So, I mean, nothing really surprising me. God does things all the time which I'm like, wow. But generally speaking, I'm very audacious as a person.
I love that, and I think that fills into your character. And I think also as well, just looking through your history, the things that you've done, your achievements, there's like a common thread around your character. You talked about what you're like when you're younger, but also your purpose. What is it that you feel drives your journey? You know, what is your purpose?
So I think, so in terms of purpose, I feel like, so when I was younger, I felt I always had a purpose to, didn't really understand. I think purpose is kind of like it's very layered, it's like an onion, right? You peel off one and there's more and more gets revealed and revealed. And onions are probably, I mean, a crazy example, but it's just the whole point about it being layered. And I think as I've grown up, I've begun to see much more of my purpose be revealed to me. But I think it has always been around the same thing. It has been about, I can help to support other people, right? That's been a key thing for me. So whether or not I'm trying to achieve success for myself,
Yeah.
also to be an example of other people. And I feel like for me, just being able to, when it's about purpose, I feel like, even when I think about like serving other people, which of the books are very big on giving back, it is about, I feel like if I look after God's people, it'll take care of my stuff. And so I always feel like I always have the time to look after other people and do what I can for other people. And that doesn't mean to be a martyr, by the way, because I think you have to have a healthy boundary. You can't just, like, I'm not Jesus. So therefore, I mean, you have to have that boundary.
Yeah.
But for me, it's very important to, when people don't really do nothing for anybody else, I'm really amazed that you're that obnoxious and lack that much self-awareness. I feel like your life is so important and so much is going into you can't help no one else. I think that is a dangerous place to be.
You know, it's really powerful and it relates a lot to kind of the reasons why we put on this event, because ultimately we want to help you work with as many people in your community as possible. There's so much talent, so much expertise, so much experience, not just in this room, but around the university, around the community. So that really plays quite strongly into one of the reasons why we do this, and yeah, I'm glad you said that. Incredible to sit here and just hear how purposeful you are about developing your business, about developing the relationships with the clients that you have, but also as well about developing those relationships with the community. And I think, as I said, a lot of that comes back down to your integrity, your character, and obviously a lot of that character is highlighted throughout the book and through a lot of the stuff you've done. But before we delve into some of the details of the book and also specifically your background, I'd love to find out just a bit more about, you mentioned earlier on, without moving too quickly, you mentioned earlier on that, being an author is a very different hat for you to wear. What kind of drove you to think about writing a book to share your story with people?
So I've always been keen to share my story in terms of how it's just about timing, right? And I think timing for me is very key.
Okay.
And I started writing the book in late 2017. So I think a lot of time when people see something out, they're like, oh yeah. Obviously they heard about the book in 2021. So people think, oh, that's just when you started. I started well before that. And well before that I was writing, and it was not great. It's true, isn't it? And I think sometimes you have to be honest with yourself. It's like, and I always tell people, I remember, I haven't told everyone yet, but it's something I'm happy to share. Because when I first started, I thought this was amazing, this was great, you wrote something like that. And then I remember sharing something, and the feedback was so brutal. And it's actually with a publisher, and one line I always remember, always sticks with me, it's saying, look, writing is an art. That's it, and that always stuck with me. I couldn't take the grace or the experience I had elsewhere, and I just put it to write. It's actually a skill. And so it was very quite laughed. So it was good, but it's not, we're going to publish you good. This is like good for your mates to read or some blog. This is not like what you're going to share for like mainstream international audience. And I think for me, going through that process taught me a lot, because I've not done something where I wanted to quit so much, because you keep sending drafts after draft. Like uni is light work compared to publishing, because the amount of drafts you send, and the amount, like, you ever send something so much time just praying that looks, don't find no problems, don't give me nothing to come and edit or change. And that book really, because also I was doing that while I was balancing everything else, so
Wow.
it was insane. But I felt like it was so important it's so important that, particularly our type, like my story in particular, there's a lot of commonalities and narratives in there. So though it may be about me, actually, there's a lot that people identify, and I think it's important to do that.
You say commonalities. I mean, I think there's a really strong narrative out there. And to delve into it a bit. So Lord Dr. Michael Hastings, he gave a foreword where he stated that the book is a manifesto of possibilities. And I think actually it's really inspiring when you start to look at the book, because ultimately the situation that you're in, the kind of arc of your story, it's probably not unique. I say not unique, but I mean, a lot of people that are reading it, they probably might not resonate with the story themselves, but they can absolutely resonate with the lessons that you've learned and the transformational art that you've taken, right? So I think from that perspective, there's something to take away from the book, from your story, in so many different ways, and I think that's really powerful. But just going back to, again, when you were growing up in Peckham, looking at those possibilities, what were you like as a child, and what were those possibilities that you thought were going to be viable for you growing up in Peckham?
So, when I was young, I was very, audacious, very much. I talk about in the book, right, in terms of very much living a double life, right? I was at year 10, 5 GCSEs, year 11, 12 GCSEs, like top student, doing well, gifted and talented, everything else. At the end of the day, for me, it's like, look, I just wanted to make money regardless. At the end of the day, no GCSEs were going to put money in my pocket. That's the truth. And I wasn't going to do no £5 job for some young person. That's the truth. And I think for me that was very much what drove me, right? It's the factor of like lacking stuff. I talk about in the book, like growing up, not being able to like, ask your mum, can you come and get this? She doesn't really get it for you, or you want these new kickers, you can't be using last year's ones. These are all rules. Like when you're young, this is your world, right? That everybody can have this, but you can't have it, and you don't understand why. Because like, mum, you work, so you should have money to do this right.
And that comes back down to, sorry to jump in, that comes back down to what you said around appreciating, or not even appreciating things when they're given to you. I think there's something that we talked about on the call, where you were saying there's a lot of people that get into entrepreneurship for reasons that are very specific to themselves, which you can kind of identify as greed. And working with students and graduates, we kind of see that, where people think, okay, I see Mark Zuckerberg, I see Snapchat, I see this platform that's got billions of accounts, I want to do that, I want to be an influencer, I want people to know me. And they don't really think about what's their reason why, what's the purpose they can provide, what's going to drive them. So from your perspective, could that be an element of greed there as a child, thinking, okay, look, I want this, I want that, I want to live like the Joneses, etc., that kind of drove you then?
Look, most children are greedy anyway. Like, where should you learn appreciation? I was like, I've only really learned deep appreciation for like my upbringing as I've got older. That's the truth. And with more things I know, the much more I appreciate, particularly my mum has sacrificed everything, because I'm old enough and I truly get in terms of how challenging and how difficult it would have been to raise someone like myself. So like, there are people might think, your mum must be so proud. She has gone through hell and back, does that make sense? So I'm glad that obviously me and my brother are making her proud. But that appreciation has only really come later on, because like I said, you don't know any better, right? You just take. So that's what you do as a child, you take. Nothing else.
One of the more pointed things for anyone who...
I know children bring more value than that.
That's true. I mean, as a child, you don't know any better, right? And if you have things that are available to you, you don't appreciate the sacrifice that's enabled you to get those things, right? So I completely agree with that. And having a little daughter myself, I just see the take. And as a dad, you're going to give her as much as you can, but at the same time, that appreciation starts to accrue when you get older, when you start to realise the value of things that you're given, and also the value of things that you're given back when you're a child. So I think that's absolutely apt what you're saying there. But one of the most poignant themes from the book and from your story is obviously when you were arrested for murder at the age of 18. Can you talk about the impact that had on your life and that transformational arc that you went on post that?
Yeah, so it's a very profound way to just drop that in.
Sorry.
I was thinking that, where did you go? That is one of like the key things in the story, in the book, which I do talk about, is the story in terms of 2 days after turning 18 and being charged for a murder that I didn't commit, and 6 other charges alongside 4 others of my friends under joint enterprise that talk about in terms of being charged and just going to photo and essentially how my whole world turned upside down at that moment, and in terms of just being in a position where I'm like, wow, I could be out if I'm lucky when I was 47, and at the time I just turned 18. And so for me it's very much being in a position where it's very even difficult to comprehend how do you spend 30 years in this tight environment, 24 hours a day, likely in a cell, somewhere where you go like that in your bed and you can probably touch the wall if you leave. And for me, honestly, it's something I never anticipated, never expected. But for me, it's more like, look, even if I did go to jail, just not for this. I would have been grateful for anything else that I've done. But for me, this whole murder that I didn't do was just, it just floored me. And I would say, to be honest, at that moment, one of the things I was doing was my A-levels. So I was studying philosophy, politics, and history. So in my final year, getting ready to go to uni, it turned into $9,000 a year. So I was like, there's no bad time to go to jail, but it was definitely a bad time. Because I was thinking to myself, I need to really make sure I get into this next intake. And so I was able to do my A-levels in Fulham Prison, first person to ever do A-levels in Fulham Prison. And I really fought to do that as well. And come back and talk about different people. So I had someone called Joanne Thompson at the time, he was in education. He really fought for me to do that. I met my mum outside and my stepdad in order to get reading materials so I could actually revise and take on these exams. All things that were not part of her job spec, but she just went out of her way to go and do. So for me, that was 7%. So I passed my A-level exams in Fulham. Then we had an 8-week trial for our case at the Old Bailey. And so 4 weeks into that trial, I then was acquitted by the judge. But for people to even understand, even during those 4 weeks, your life is in the balance, in the hands of 12 people who don't know you from Adam, who are going to make a judgment. And obviously you think about all the stigmas, all the biases that exist, and there's 5 or 7 black boys now in the Old Bailey sitting on chairs, all 19 to 14. 2 people who I've never ever met before either, who are just there for assisting someone else. So you have to imagine that whole scene. And so for 4 weeks, you're literally hearing the prosecution's case, which is very much about painting you in a particular light. And that was very much a lot to go through, because you wake up every day at 4 a.m. to be strip searched out of the prison, on the way to the Old Bailey, one of the circle vans, spend the whole day, come back again, process free, strip search, go back to your cell, and then enough occasions you don't even get to shower, don't get to do anything. So most mornings when you wake up that early, it's because you have to wake up to clean yourself from your sink in your cell. And in the book, I very much touch on that reality, but then at the same time, I talk about like being acquitted, obviously, which for me was the most joyful moment ever in my life, but also the most bittersweet, because though I was acquitted, my other friends were still on trial. So they still had to continue another 4 weeks of that trial. So one of them was found guilty on trial, one of them got hung jury, and then he was found guilty later on, a couple of months later. But essentially in the book, for me, it's just very important, and probably use it as a helpful reminder to everyone now that the book is not, though that's a big thing which happened to me and very traumatic, and I would never wish that upon myself. It's also making sure that people know that you are much more than the worst thing that has happened to you, and you're much more than the worst thing that you've done also. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I think a lot of times we define ourselves too much by the most tragic event that's happened to us. And so for me, this book is really trying to show the story in terms of how I was able to bounce back, and as you mentioned, like a year after being acquitted, I was in the House of Commons launching this Kenny report. That's literally, I was out November the 9th, 2011, and then November the 12th, 2012, I was literally in the House of Commons within a year of that experience. And just to show you, so there's no real excuse in terms of why we can't pursue our dreams, why we can't, and also why we need to be defined by that, right? Because at the end of the day, the truth is, if we didn't mention that, no one ever would ever think that happened anyway. And for when we talk about possibilities, and this is one thing that I try to talk about in the book, we have to be so careful to not judge a book by its cover, first and foremost, and also just to learn to, how do we recognize and realize the potential of other young people coming from, not just Peckham, but other places where we don't believe, whether we like it or not, that greatness comes from. Because the problem is we all have a picture in our head about where success comes from, what it looks like, what university holds it, and everything else. I know that is so flawed. And because we always try to find shortcuts in our mind to help us be like, oh yeah, they've done this. But for me, it's like, look, that 80-year-old Kenny that was sitting there 24 hours a day in the cell, my mum came to speak to you at that moment in time and told you actually, my boy could do X, Y, Z. None of you would believe her anyway. And that's the truth. And a lot of times people feel good, but that is just because a lot of times we are so quick to write people off. Very quick.
That's interesting. And poignant as well. And I think just looking at that kind of, I keep on using the word transformation, but I mean, honestly, just looking at the different elements of what you did post coming out of prison, you can just see the transformation in your outlook on life, what was possible for you. And I think there's a story in the book where you talk about the fact that you Googled yourself after coming out, and literally there was just details of you being set down, and you wanted to kind of change that narrative in terms of your perception. I mean, how important was that for you to change the perception of people that they had of you? And also as well, how did you actually go about doing that? So obviously you mentioned about the Kenny report coming a year later, but I mean, just that year, what was it that you did that enabled you to have that drive, have that purpose, and also tactically actually go out there and say, look, this is actually me, see me for this, not this?
I guess for me it's just more about I had to remind myself of like what I was saying in prison, right? And the prayers that I made, that look at this, I mean, Jesus said, this doesn't break me, then this should make me, right? And for me, it's like, so me being out and having a second chance at life, for me, that was enough to realize that, look, I need to make something of this. Not everyone is fortunate enough to go through that experience and come out and to be free, right? We see enough miscarriages of justice with different things, but I still have, 2 friends that were talking about it, but at the end of the day, they've been there since 2010, till now, right? So
on the same
case, right? So these are 2 people I go and visit. So, and a lot has happened in that. Like this is about 12 years now. So you have to imagine. So for me, it's very much about. I owed it to myself. I owed it to also to God in terms of this opportunity I had to actually make something of myself. And so for me, instead of like, obviously I looked at, as I talk about in the book, Googled my name, and that brought a lot of shame, right? Because at that point I thought, well, I could just change my name. I could do different things. And these are all real thoughts I had, and genuine, I talk about it, genuine conversation with my mum about, I didn't change my name. It was also like, I didn't really like my dad like that anyway, and everything else. And so I thought, but however, for me, it was just very important just to pursue my dreams and just be focused. And also, just to not keep going back and keep searching. But sometimes it's like we then go back and we keep reminding us. I didn't need to keep searching. It was just more about, let me just go pursue my dreams and prove to myself. I mean, that's sometimes the problem is we keep trying to prove to other people. I was just proving to myself about, okay, I could really do this.
Wow.
And that was it.
You know what, it's powerful to hear that, to see that. It's evident that you have obviously gone through that kind of process and come out the other end with, obviously I mentioned all those achievements previously. It's evident to see how you have transformed yourself. And I think, you know, there are so many takeaways for everyone here in the room around how you have done that, what you have done to do that, and the way you are living with such purpose and legacy. And I can only believe that there's so many takeaways in terms of the value of your story and hearing how you have done that. I mean, as you pointed out, there are so many people here who are entrepreneurial. We are in a time where there's a cost of living crisis. You know, there are challenges that we are having to face, and you have shown so much motivation to inspire all of us. If you were to give one piece of advice to people to really take away from your story that will hopefully help inspire them further on your journey, what would that be?
And for me, I think that's easy. The one thing I focused on much, and I think was the most transformational for me, was actually just focusing on my character. And in terms of actually dealing with myself, taking accountability for myself, my actions, my behaviors. And because the truth is, those things that you don't do with privately will spill out in public. And so much entrepreneurs, when we talk about character, your relationship with money, your character, and how it shows in terms of how you handle your money. Right? And we talked about on the phone, right? Like, if I didn't have the right character, the minute we started making some money, I'd have been in Harrods and Selfridges thinking, yeah. Because when I was younger, these were like the childhood dreaming I get to. Yeah. However, down to understanding the importance and responsibility of actually, I need to steward this organization. It became very different to how I saw the money. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, this is just my money to now go and spend. I think a lot of times, that's what I would say for me in character, because people don't want to do that work because it's not Instagrammable. It's not something you can talk about. However, but the evidence in and the growth of that is seen in everything that you do. And I would say that's the one thing I really had to do. I had to look deep in myself. I talk about in the book, right? It's not about how high you can go, but how deep you can go within yourself. And a lot of times, people want to spend more time studying other people than they study themselves. And anybody that you feel you know more than yourself, you are in a very dangerous place. Very. And that goes for so much people where they can tell me about this celebrity, they can tell me all about this great entrepreneur, but they can't tell you much about themselves.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Kenny, for me personally, this has been humbly inspiring. Really appreciate you just dropping so much knowledge on us. And I think also as well for everyone else, there's so many different lessons that we can all learn from your story. So please everyone just join me in giving Kenny a massive